I kind of want to go through the top 10 free agents. You know, I'll name the player, their position, their age, because age right now is an important factor in what these contracts these guys will get. Give me an idea of where your initial gut reaction to where you think this player fits in well. Not necessarily if you think they'll go there, but where you think they'll fit in. And let's start off with Tanner Scott, the reliever, 30 years old, was traded from the Marlins to the Padres. The Padres gave up a boatload for him, really set the tone for that reliever market. Tanner Scott, one, I would love to see as a Yankee. I think he would fit in really well, would be a great foil to Luke Weaver in the later innings. And I think that's also a pretty realistic signing option.
I mean, the Padres obviously giving up all that for him want to keep him, so I think that's the obvious choice. My sleeper choice would be music to John's ears, the Phillies. I mean, what does this team need? Bullpen. Where should they invest? Bullpen. We're going to hear about them in the Juan Soto race, of course, and every team that has a pulse of competing for a World Series should be in the Juan Soto race. But when it comes to what the Phillies' actual priority should be this offseason, if Soto's off the table, it should be the bullpen. And Tanner Scott's a guy that could be a closer for you in a big World Series game.
Yeah, for me, it's, Tanner Scott. He's going to end up going to a team that I think is going to be very noisy this offseason. And this is going to be not music to your guys' ears, Dylan and Corey, but it's the Boston Red Sox. I think Boston's going to be very loud this offseason. They signed Cora to the extension. I don't think Cora would want it to stay if they weren't going to go out and spend. And I think Tanner Scott is a start for them because that bullpen was atrocious for the Red Sox last year.
Next guy up, Jack Flaherty, starter, 29 years old. I think there's a number of teams he can go to. I think Baltimore is somebody that could really use him again.
I think he's staying in L.A. Dodger fan growing up, just won a World Series with them. They have the money. I don't see him leaving at all. I think it's like about a 1% shot.
I think he goes back to Detroit.
I think he stays with the Dodgers.
Next up, the 29-year-old shortstop, Willie Adames. I think he's a Dodger. I think he fits in perfect with that roster.
I sneaky think the Mariners are an option here. I think this is the kind of guy that they go after. They're not big money spenders typically, but I think Adames is a guy who could fit in the middle of their lineup, either near the top or kind of in the middle there around Julio Rodriguez. But I think the Mariners are a sneaky team because I also think they could potentially look around at the AL West and be like, the Rangers took a big step back. Question marks with the Astros as they started off slow this past year and they have some free agents. This might be where they feel like it's their spot to capitalize, and Adames is a guy you could add to that roster to potentially bolster yourself as the best team in the division.
Yeah, for Willie Adames, I actually think this is where San Francisco is going to swing big. I think they see an opportunity here to finally land a big free agent, and they're going to overpay. I think San Francisco is going to be the ones that, really go in on Adames because they're just not going to be in on the Juan Soto deal. They're not going to be able to match what the Dodgers, the Yankees, Mets, and I think the Red Sox are going to try, but I also don't think they're going to be able to for Soto. So I think Adames to the Giants.
I'm going to say the Braves. I just feel like the Braves, they're going to be coming back and have a lot of guys off injuries and, kind of going to want to make a little splash here.
Yeah, and even though Dansby Swanson isn't, the world beater that he was in Atlanta, or it felt like, I think Atlanta is missing Dansby Swanson to an extent. I know Arcia has been solid for them, but I did think about Adames to Atlanta as well, John.
Yeah.
Next up, Pete Alonso, 30-year-old first baseman. I think he goes back to the Mets, and they end up retiring number 20 for the greatest offensive player in Mets history.
I think he returns to the Mets, but I think a sneaky sleeper team could be the Houston Astros. The weakest position on the team by far was first base last year. Alonso has a ton of pop. I think he could really benefit from those Crawford boxes. And again, I feel like they could see potentially a team like the Mariners making a move and be like, is the AL West slipping away from us? let's go make a pop. Let's show that we're still here to play.
Yeah, for Pete Alonso, I do think he comes back to the Mets, and I think that's ultimately going to be because the Mets are going to offer him the most money. I think that Pete Alonso's value is highest to the New York Mets.
How much money do you think that is?
I think the Mets are going to give him close to $200 million. And when you look at what Freddie Freeman just did, how can you look at Pete Alonso and say that he is worth more than Freddie Freeman? I believe Freddie's contract was 6 for $170 in that range. So look, Alonso, I think he's going to end up he should be in that 6 for $160, between 160 and 180. But I think the Mets are going to overpay him. I think they're going to, have a little bit of emotion. David Stearns was talking about this, immediately after the season ended. And he said, look, I can't, I don't talk any finances with Pete. That's all with his agent. But the Mets are in a bit of a tough, not tough, but different situation with this, because most teams, they can separate and they can just make business decisions. But the Mets decision makers, Steve Cohen and David Stearns, are both lifelong diehard Mets fans. And the Mets had moments this season that, they haven't experienced in the entire time the franchise has been around. And they didn't even win a world championship. And I think that is what is going to be the ultimate decider and really more emotion in this decision than any other baseball decision Stearns has ever made.
Next up, we got Anthony Santander, 30-year-old outfielder. I think he returns to Baltimore. I think we start to see Baltimore keep their own guys.
I would bet on that, but I think a sneaky other spot for him is the Dodgers. I think it's possible Teoscar Hernandez gets a bag somewhere, ends up leaving the Dodgers, and they replace him with Santander somehow.
Yeah, see, I actually think Santander is going to end up in New York. Whoever doesn't get Soto. I think that's ultimately what it's going to be for Santander. I think Santander is going to be the consolation prize for Juan Soto.
I like Santander, but I don't know. To me, he looks like he's somebody whose big contract's just going to end so horribly.
No, I am not, trying to get too much into it. I think he's someone who's going to give you a couple more years, but he's not someone who I think is going to give you the term that he's going to get in a contract. But at the same time, you're going to throw all your eggs in Soto. If Soto doesn't sign right away, which why would he? Santander, he's going to be able to leverage the other team into, giving him a bit more. And that's going to be in terms of years than you probably would have liked.
Next up, we got Max Fried. He's a 31-year-old starter. Honestly, I can see him going to the Red Sox.
I had the exact same team, Boston. I think this is the splash that they make in the pitching market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Boston is definitely a team that's going to go after Fried, but I think another one is going to be San Francisco, and I think they're going to try to grab Fried because they're not going to be able to bring back Blake Snell.
And honestly, I wouldn't surprise me if the Orioles go after him either. So I feel like the Orioles need pitching, and they have the money to spend. Like if they decide they want to spend money.
Well, yeah, and the new ownership group has said that they're going to spend.
So
next up, we got Alex Bregman. He's a 31-year-old third baseman. It seemed like that he was going to be done with the Astros. It seemed like they were done with him. It seemed like they were going to be parting ways. I can see him going to the Blue Jays. Pair him with old friend George Springer.
I think after this World Series and the infield defense being such a problem, the Yankees should certainly give Bregman a look. But ultimately, I have him going to the Royals. I think a left infield of him and Witt Jr. is really nice. He can put the ball in play. He's kind of exactly what the Royals, team is already about: defense and putting the ball in play.
Yeah, I think the Royals is definitely a great call. I think, the Red Sox, again, this is another one that is definitely going to take a look into Bregman just because. But I think the biggest sleeper for Alex Bregman, and this is if, the Mets miss out on Juan Soto, it is the New York Mets. I know, or not Juan Soto, rather, Pete Alonso. If Pete Alonso ends up walking, Alex Bregman is who the Mets turn to. If he is still unsigned, you
Move
bring him
Vientos
in
to
at third
first.
base and Vientos to first base, which is where Vientos actually played a majority of his minor league career because Brett Beatty.
Another team I want to throw out there, though, for Bregman is the Phillies, especially with the recent reports that they're looking to move Bohm and Castellanos.
What a move from the Phillies, looking to move Bohm.
You
They
know what
finally
team
caught
needs a third
on.
baseman, though, Dylan? You know who needs a third baseman?
Nope, I
Bohm
don't.
from the Yankees.
Bohm, Marsh, and Castellanos
no.
all being moved really leads me to believe that they want to try to make a push for Soto.
If Alec Bohm got moved to the Yankees, I'd have to really
You'd become a
consider
Phillies
some.
fan.
No. I don't know. I'd be so disappointed in the team.
You would treat a player on your team like I would treat Saquon. Next up, we got Blake Snell. He's 32, starting pitcher. He's a tough one. I really don't know where he goes. I think San Fran just feels like home for him now.
Yes, Scott Boras client. Scott Boras last offseason, if you remember, he kind of got the back end of the stick when it came to money. MLB teams kind of didn't let him push them around.
Mm-hmm.
Could see Boris seeking some revenge, and that would result in his clients looking for money. I think Blake Snell would stay with the Giants because I think that they're going to pay him a lot. But I think this might be one of those another highest bidder situation. And listen, if the Red Sox want to go all in, I mean, you go get Blake Snell and just skip over the Max Fried portion. Blake Snell also potentially to the Orioles if Burns moves on.
Yeah, I think that if Blake Snell was going to stay with the Giants, he wouldn't have declined his option. I believe it was over $30 million. It was a pretty high number. So I do think that Blake Snell has now done this a couple years in a row, it feels like, where, he's going into free agency and hasn't really gotten that long-term deal. We saw Montgomery move off of Boris after, what he called an absolute miserable, botched offseason and free agency opportunity for him. So I'm really curious to see how this goes for Blake Snell because it doesn't feel like he's had a lot of great experiences in free agency in the past. It doesn't feel like he's really been able to, command money anywhere he goes. He's had to find teams that are willing to give it. Whereas, if you're going to opt out of a contract like he did, and the amount of money that he's giving up, typically, you have suitors lining up to pay you the big bucks. So I'm curious. I'm not too sure. I think that, Baltimore, Boston, and Toronto are the ones to look out for on Snell. Mostly because I think all these teams are going to look to compete with the Yankees. And if you want to compete with the Yankees, left-handed starting pitching is always a good start.
I just feel like the Orioles are probably in contention with all these like top pitchers on free agency this year. Especially if like Burns doesn't come back, you'd think they're at least going to try and go after Snell or Fried. So it's like just a matter of fact of like who they get. But I think like they're in the running for all three of these guys.
Next up is Corbin Burns. He's 30 years old, starting pitcher. I'm going to say he doesn't go back to Baltimore. And two teams that I think would be sneaky fun for him would be the Tigers and Royals because it gives him a really solid chance to make the playoffs and compete. Easier division. And two teams that can really pay him for his services.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Astros for Burns. I think he fits their timeline. 30 years old. I don't think they mind paying a veteran. And I almost think the Astros this offseason might, after the spark that they had to end last year and then the disappointing playoff performance, might give it another run of things rather than blow it up. And they bring in Corbin Burns.
Yeah, see, I am going to go with the team that we haven't talked a lot about, but they are going to be active, and they're probably going to be active in trying to acquire a good amount of the names we've talked about, and that's the Chicago Cubs. I think that Corbin Burns would be a great fit there. He's a guy who's very familiar with the NL Central Division, and he's reunited with Craig Counsell.
And lastly, we have Juan Soto, outfielder, 26 years old. It's a lot younger than a lot of the names we've been saying, 29, 30, 31, 4 or 5 years younger. That's a massive difference. To me, it's been a two-team race. It's going to be a two-team race. It always has been a two-team race between the Yankees and Mets. I think the Mets can probably pay him more money. I think the Yankees have their limit, but I think the Yankees give him a better chance to win than the Mets do, just by nature of the National League being way too stacked and the American League being a little easier to win with. But I think it's going to go down to Yankees and Mets and which borough he likes better.
Yeah, I've talked to you about this, Corey, off of camera. Juan Soto this year became my favorite player in baseball, and if he left, it would be beyond devastating for me. Um, I feel like this is a contract that sometimes the Yankees will say we're the Yankees and we have our limit, we have our max. I think we saw that with Yamamoto, and it is what it is. I think for Juan Soto, it's break out the checkbook and figure out the rest later. And that's kind of how I'd be operating. You said it's a two-team race. There's going to be a surprise team. There's always a surprise team in the mix.
That's Heyman talking.
Whether Scott Boras is just using them to run up the price between both New York teams or whether they're actually in, I think the Texas Rangers are a sneaky team to watch with the state income tax in Texas. Juan Soto gets to see more of that money. Scott Boras gets to see more of that money. This is a team that just won the World Series 2 years ago. For what it's worth, they have Jacob deGrom coming back. You still have Adolis Garcia, Seager, Simeon. If you add Soto to that mix, it might be the most dangerous lineup in baseball.
And let's get something out there
if you
right
want to
now.
use the state income tax argument, then Tampa Bay is right in the mix.
Tampa Bay
Something out there right now, though.
Tampa
Soto's
Bay
not
would have to
taking any
sell the
deferrals.
stadium. They'd be playing at a little league field to pay him.
There's going to be no deferments in Soto's deal, so let's get that out of there now. Get that out of your mind. He's not taking that Ohtani, 30 years down the line, get paid. He's not going to take that $2.5 million paycheck now. It's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be pretty much all up front.
Yeah, look, I think for Juan Soto, my opinion is, right on par with you, Corey. It's going to be between the Mets and Yankees. I do agree that other teams are going to be involved. I just don't think they're going to be willing. I think, even for the Dodgers, you just won. You are already getting additions with guys coming back from injury. You're not going to be as willing to dish out another mega contract like this. Now, if Juan Soto goes to the Mets, if you're the Dodgers, are you really worried about the Mets if Juan Soto goes there? No. You still feel good about what you're doing. So I don't think the Dodgers are someone who's going to break their backs to make that happen. I think that the Mets and Steve Cohen felt like, they wanted to go out and get those big money contracts early on with Carlos Correa and Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. But this is the one. Ever since the Nationals sent Juan Soto out, it traded him, and he wasn't going to sign the extensions early with Washington. Talks with Met fans have already been started. Juan Soto apparently wants to go to the Mets. He's apparently close with Starling Marte, believe it or not, and Marte has been recruiting him for the last 2 years. So I think that plays a bit of a role as well. I think Soto does want to go to Queens in a bit of a way.
Did Ben just admit to collusion where the Mets should be, not allowed to sign him now?
It's before he was even a Yankee, Corey. Calm down.
He's on another team. You're not allowed to recruit a player from another team.
Look, calm down. Anyway, I think that Steve Cohen ultimately, if Juan Soto is going to follow the dollar signs, I think he's going to feel like the Mets are competitive enough consistently with the money Steve Cohen's willing to spend. And I think it may not even be a matter of if the Yankees can match. It may just be a matter of principle if they will match with how high the
And
number.
that's exactly what I was saying there. The Yankees are such the type, Cashman is such the type to say, we gave him our best offer, and it's millions less than what the Mets offered him. And I get it. You don't have the money. BS. Like, you'll figure it out down the line. Backload the contract and figure it out later.
Sell some
Money's
chicken
going to go. Yeah, the Yankee hat is the most popular selling sports hat in the world. You play in a sport with no, salary cap. Garrett Cole's contract is up in 4 years. Like, you could figure. This is the give him what he wants and figure out the roster later. You have Dominguez, you have Wells, you have Volpe, you have Oswaldo Cabrera. You have so much young talent on the team that if you have to play these guys in big spots because you paid Soto, I could live with it as a Yankee fan. We didn't go out and get so-and-so because of Soto deal. Fine, but you just can't leave one of the best hitters in baseball ever on the board because you were too cheap. If he wants to go to the Mets and he picks the Mets over us, I could live with it. I could sleep at night. But if I have to hear I wanted to stay with the Yankees, but the Mets just outbid them by so much, I'm going to lose my mind.
But then again, if the Yankees offered him $700 million and then the Mets decided to pay him $900, I don't know if
Sure.
That's ridiculous.
If we break Otani's contract, then I guess maybe I could believe that the Yankees are like, hey, we don't have the money.
I wonder if it's not I don't think it will be about the money with the Yankees. I think and I honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's a matter of principle as well with this because I don't see the Yankees doing this either. But it could be a point where the Yankees are just like, we're not giving a player more than this. This is what we gave Aaron Judge. We're not giving someone more than X amount. Because obviously Soto's younger than Judge. So I understand those contracts are not on the same level. But, what if the Yankees are just like, look, we're not going over $500 million?
Do you think there's an inverse to that, though, of where the Yankees were not losing a player to the Mets?
Yes. I think that's really
there's
what
the
it's going to
inverse
be.
of that, but I also think at the same time they're not going to be as worried about that because you can't be insecure with money when it comes to Steve Cohen. You just have to accept the fact that he has more than you.
I think
let's be honest here. If you go into that route, then you're going to
I don't. No, I don't. The Dodgers
the Yankees stand more to lose by letting Soto walk than anything else because one, they'll lose so much revenue. The fans will revolt against them. This isn't losing, some minor. This is losing a 26-year-old.
It depends what they do with the money. To be fair,
it's a weak free agent class overall. There's no Jacoby Ellsbury to pivot to. Last time they lost,
there is.
That was,
but
when
Ben said though, if the Yankees lost out on Soto, but then they finished this offseason with Santander, Bregman, and Christian Walker, the fans will be there opening day.
I was going to say, you don't even need Bregman at that point. If you bring in Santander as well as Christian Walker, I think your team definitely got deeper.
Yeah, my point being, if the Yankees lose out on Soto for whatever the reason is, it's not like this team is so terrible they can't be anything. He's great and he's generational and they should pay him, but the team is deeper than one player.
But it also stops right there. He's great and he's generational. He's a
I went on the tangent as to figure it out later, but if he picks somebody else and there's no, we did what we could, he just picked someone else. You have to be able to pivot and build a reasonable roster with the money you were going to pay that guy.
Able to convince the fan base that they actually tried, the Yamamoto deal. I understand not wanting to give an unproven player who's never thrown a major league pitch more money than Garrett Cole. I think that's a fair take for the Yankees to have. I think $300 million was a lot more than anybody thought Yamamoto was going to get, and the fact that he eclipsed that with the Dodgers at $326.
Yeah,
I think that's a totally fair. I think the Yankees, I don't think anybody should complain about how they did that. Yamamoto clearly wanted the Dodgers, and the Yankees played fair. The Yankees gave him a more than fair offer for what he was.
I mean, we'll hear what the offer was. We'll know if he leaves what the Yankees offered
Right.
and what he got.
What's the lowest number you can think of for the Yankees to offer that you'd be okay with him leaving?
I mean, it really depends on the years. I think that's more where the Yankees could potentially lose him. Not AAB, but
Could you
how
do 14
comfortable
years?
would I? Yeah. I'll do 20. But I also think, though, how good of a hitter he is. Like, you have to understand there's value in him all the way up until he calls it a quits. Like, every at bat he takes is going to be competitive for the rest of his career. And that's just it. You're not signing this guy because of the fielder that he is, although Juan Soto, Gold Glove finalist, did make that cut.
The other part of that, too, Dylan, is if you sign him to a 15-year deal, you're signing him for years 1 through 8. Like the back 7 years you'll just deal with.
Yeah.
You're hoping to win 2 to 3 titles in those first 8 years, though, if you're going to give him that much money. But, you're giving him those years to bring him in now. You're accepting the fact, though, that those last 5 to 7 years in a 15-year contract are just not going to be that good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to accept it. I think the Yankees should be willing to accept it.
Last question as we wrap this up. When does Soto sign? John, let's start with you.
I think it's going to be later. I think you're going to see like kind of probably not even until maybe like winter meetings around there.
Give me a date.
A date. I don't know. I'm tired.
Give me a month.
A month? I'll say January. I can't give you an exact date.
Early or late?
I'm going to say early January.
All right. Ben?
I think he's going to sign a bit earlier just because I think there's going to be a lot of urgency with these teams trying to get him in and, having to pivot. I think if Soto takes too long, you're going to end up seeing guys pivot to a Santander, to a Bregman, to an Adames, trying to get just a different big bat into their lineup and work their way in because, there are some teams who will have to do a bit of finagling to get Soto into their lineup. He's not someone you could plug into multiple spots. He's playing one spot and that's it. I think that ultimately Soto will sign in December. We're going to get him just after those winter meetings, I believe. And then the number is going to be 15 for $525, just around $35 a year.
15 for how much?
$525.
Wow. Dylan?
I think he signs December 19th. Oh, I picked that day because that is the Thursday before the week before Christmas. Get the weekend, go travel, go be with family, have your contract sorted out. I feel like that is the luxury of being the guy who runs free agency. You get to say, hey, this is when I want to decide by. I want to go into the holidays and I want to be, relaxing. I think the number's bigger, though. I think we're looking at 14 for 600.
All right. I'm also of the minds of he signs winter meetings. I'm leaning around 12, 11. Not the last day of the winter meetings, but the second to last day to create some buzz. And I'm thinking the number is 13 for 624.
So you guys are really, really bidding higher than me here.
Well,
I mean, if this is the way it works, perfect.
See, but here's the thing, and I think, yes, Soto with his age makes it a different situation. Is he like Ohtani's contract is unreal, but is he really that much higher value than a Bryce Harper to Philadelphia or
Yes.
what Mike Trout in his prime was supposed to be for the Angels? Because, I mean, you guys are giving him $200 million more than what the highest contract in baseball ever was before Ohtani.
He's 26.
I think
contracts are getting more.
He's not even in
expensive
his
every
prime
year.
yet.
I think one, obviously, just general inflation there. But two, for the Yankees, I
All
think.
right, inflation only gets to a point when you're
No,
talking.
I know.
billions
I
of
said,
dollars.
I said, but some of it is that, obviously. I think Juan Soto would break the record if we were just at an even playing field because of his age and
Juan
because
Soto
of the
signs for $600 million. We're never seeing another qualifying offer sent out again. He's going to be like close to $30 million soon if this keeps up.
Yeah, but I also think you brought up earlier, and I'll just quickly make the point on it because I know we're going a little long here. Will the Yankees be willing to pay him more than Judge? One guy produced this postseason, and the other one didn't. And I
One
think
guy's your captain, though. Aaron Judge had been brought
the
up.
captain and
Yeah,
the
but
captain who
it's a
failed.
different situation when you trade for a guy and then he comes in and plays one season with you versus a guy who's been brought up. He set crazy records. He had
am I wrong, or did A-Rod make more than Jeter?
An insane season that Judge had before he signed that contract. Judge had as good of a season as you could have.
Yeah, but Judge is also 5 years older.
Yes, but still, but from the Yankees standpoint, those are things that they're going to still try to use when they're negotiating.
Yeah, I'm sure the negotiation will be what it is, but at the end of the day, they were competing against the Giants for Judge. Yes, but Judge wanted to be a Yankee.
I was going to say they were able to get Judge for
Soto wants the paycheck. Yeah, but Soto wants the check. Judge wanted to be the Yankee captain. Soto wants the bank.
See, but that fits with exactly what the Yankees typically try to go for, and that's, a guy like Judge. Soto's going for the bank. He wants the bag. They have a limit.
Yes, this is my concern. Also, this is my big concern with this team, absolutely.
But also, Cal called Judge and said, what's the number, what's it going to take? And Judge told him the number it was going to take. So if Judge told him 10 for 400, Cal would have said, okay. Judge told him the number of the deal.
But I'm curious, from the Yankee standpoint, what their limit is, how high they'll go is. I think that the Mets will be willing to go higher because Steve Cohen doesn't have that precedent set already. I think, the Yankees are established as being the world-class organization. They could go another 10 years without winning a World Series, but they keep having over 500 seasons and keep doing what they're doing. They're still regarded as a world-class, best-run, sentient organization, essentially. So, they have a certain level of pride when it comes to dishing out these deals. I'm not saying that, they're not going to give Soto what he wants. I'm just curious as to what their limit is because I feel like it is a possibility that it does get too high, not necessarily for them to pay, but for them to feel okay with giving to somebody.
I mean, the contract I laid out of 14 for 600 is 42 annually. That's not, staggeringly higher than what Judge got. I believe Judge is in the high 30s.
Yeah, but it's for twice as long.
Well, he's just 5 years younger.
No, but look, and I just gave you 15 for 35 a year, and that's what I feel like is what the market for Soto is going to be, because ultimately the Mets and Yankees are going to know that they're just bidding against each other.
Yeah, like I said, I think Scott Boras is on a bit of a revenge tour this offseason.
Oh, yeah, and he's going to hold a bunch of teams over a barrel with this Soto deal.
Do you think this is going to be like his last big player in football when they were sitting around saying can we live with Barkley going somewhere and don't give him the money, and then he goes to just I'm just do you think
it's different because the Giants had no intention of paying Saquon at that point because the Giants had just gone through this whole situation with Saquon the year before.
I'll also say this: Hal Steinbrenner will go over Brian Cashman's head and just give Soto the contract himself if he was that uncomfortable with it.
Which is what he did with Judge.
Exactly.
But that's going to do it for us. We'll kind of revisit next week. We'll know, which players took the qualifying offer. This time last year, we saw some players sign. I believe Wheeler signed with the Phillies, right? This time last year, the first week of free agency, he just signed a long-term deal.
He got his extension.
Yeah. So we'll have an idea more. We'll talk more in depth about some of the lesser free agents just not really say lesser, but
Like
outside
Corey,
the
you didn't
top
mention
10.
your guy getting signed.
What do you mean getting signed?
Well, Garrett Cole officially, the Yankees reworked his deal, didn't they?
No, they didn't rework anything. He just rescinded
He
the opt-out.
he
Yeah, he
opted out,
rescinded the
and then they
opt-out.
said,
Yeah, but
okay. And then he
Well, I
opted
mean,
in.
Yeah, but
It
they
was
didn't
like- it
have
was like
to,
a nothing-
they didn't have
nothing
to give him
changed.
the 5th year to keep him.
Yeah.
No, they just nothing changed.
Yankees keep Cole. Coltrane's rolling.
Yeah, I mean, basically the Yankees and Cole are in no different position than they were in a month ago.
Well, they're in a different position than they were yesterday. Let's put it that way.
But yeah, so the Yankees told Cole, we're not going to pick up that 5th-year option. We don't feel comfortable with it. And Cole said, okay, I want to be a Yankee. I take it back.
Yeah. Hopefully Soto has that same energy.
But that's going to do it for us. We'll get more into the other ones. We'll talk about what each team and their free agency plan should be. Do a little Hall of Fame talk as that approaches too. That's my favorite time of year. But that'll do it here for us. Corey, Jason, Dylan, Mel, Ben Mandel, John Pauline signing off.